You are watching CNBC's Squawk on the Street live from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. The opening bell is going to ring in about 10 seconds. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Mark Haynes, along with Aaron Burnett. And we've got the futures are neutral. They're flat, prolonging the agony for CNBC's producers who are desperate for this thing to set a new record so that they can move on. Here at the big board, BFC Financial celebrating its recent transfer from the NAS, ticker BFF. And at the NASDAQ, Quintana Maritime. At least I think it's not Quintanilla Maritime.
I don't think so.
It's Quintana Maritime.
Maybe Carl
Could
has
be
a side
Quintanilla.
job. I'm not sure.
QMAR.
All right, our market reporters, every post is covered for you on Threshold Thursday. Bob kicks it off once again at the big board. Hello again, Bob.
And here we are at Family Dollar, Aaron. We're talking a little bit about what's going on with some of the retailers here. Family Dollar just came out with their earnings. It was quite good. They beat the estimates, and they gave very good guidance. Stock was up fractionally. Remember, though, all of the retailers, including Family Dollar, have come well off of their lows in August there. There's FDO, still waiting for that to open right now. Verizon did very well. Smith International doing very well in the pre-open. Smith International in particular, it's going into the S&P 500. It's going to be replacing Golden West Financial, being acquired by Wachovia. That opened just a moment ago flat, but it was about 5% in the pre-open. Verizon was down yesterday. It was down about 3%. The company had an analyst meeting, unveiled a $23 billion fiber optic plan. A lot of people thought it was expensive, but Bank of America came out and said, oh no, we had numbers that were higher. We think that this is a good deal right now for Bank of America. They raised the price target. Finally, they also upped Saks Bank of America to a buy, saying the company's finally focused on the long-awaited turnaround. Saks up 2% in the pre-open. Let's go over to Scott Wapner, standing by at the NASDAQ.
Yeah, Bob, up 5 points is what we're looking at right now over here at the NASDAQ. Let's talk about Microsoft, up 0.2%. It's going to price its new Zune digital music player, I should say, at $249, about the same price as the iPod with the same storage capacity. November 14th, the debut on that. I talked about Amgen and ImClone together earlier. Amgen, the FDA approving its new colon cancer drug, setting the stage for a price war with Erbitux from ImClone. Now, Amgen says the price of this drug will be 20% lower than Erbitux at roughly $8,000 a month. I talked to Mike Huckman, our pharmaceuticals expert. We're both kind of scratching our heads here. If this happened, why is Amgen down? So we're still trying to get to the bottom of that, but no surprise then that ImClone would be down 2%. I'm going to throw it back now to Mark and Aaron.
All right, thanks so much, Scott. And we are here. We're watching the Dow right now. It's up 20 points. We told you we had to get up 33.74 to hit the all-time high.
Where's Art going?
Art, don't go anywhere.
Don't go anywhere,
Art Cashin trying to run away from us here.
Okay.
Art, what do you think?
Well, I think we're going to take another try at it. We've got all the media support we can use, and everybody's very excited about it. It really is not an overwhelming yardstick. It's like you ran 3 miles, and now you get to run 3 miles and 10 more yards. But it's a significant thing in most people's minds. It may even have some political influence if we get there. So everybody's waiting to see if we can pull it off. 11,750 is the intraday high, and 11,722 for the closing.
Here's a tricky question, Art, and I know you're not a technical analyst. Maybe we need a technician. But what if we close above the old closing high, but don't trade above the old intraday high? We really haven't punched into record territory.
That would be correct. We would be. But if you get one of those technical analysts on, they will tell you that each one uses a specific. Some use only the closes, some use only the weekly, some use only the monthly, and when that's wrong, they revert to one of the others.
Hey, Art, yesterday Howard Silverblatt was on from S&P, and he made a point that I thought was fascinating. I actually was going to talk to you about this, too. He said, all right, fine, we hit the all-time high, so then we're essentially flat over 6 years for the Dow. At the same time, inflation has risen 19% over the same time. So I don't want to be a wet blanket here, but that sounds pretty rotten looked at that way.
Well, it's not overly impressive. I mean, your buying power is less if you sat through it. I mean, one of the other things, to Mark's earlier point, is when you make a new high, at least you get rid of the resistance of people who bought 6 years ago and never sold and are waiting to get out. They're also in rough shape.
11,721 is where we are right now.
John, what are you doing?
Come on, look, we have a record coming up here,
I'm waiting for it to hit the record. Yeah, we're within a couple of points. So I assume, Arthur, you're predicting that it'll get there in a few minutes.
That we're going to have a very exciting day, John. Absolutely
right.
Correct.
Boy, these guys are easily amused.
We
No,
have been
but-
waiting for this desperately. We had Watching Wednesday, Threshold Thursday.
Right.
Every time we get close to it, though, we back away.
Yep.
We'll get there.
And we really need Dominant on to get above 750, the intraday.
Right, intraday, right. Well, we're just looking for it to close today above 722. So.
All right.
There you have it. I mean, if he's down here rooting for it,
It's
you
gonna
know they have
happen.
rolled
It's
out all the
gonna-
guns. There's no one left in the arsenal to come out here and root it through. But what does it do for the exchange? Does it help you in any way? Does it attract new listings, or is it just one of those proud wave the flag moments?
Well, I think what it really does, it shows confidence in the economy, confidence in corporate earnings, and it really shows confidence on the part of investors. And so to the extent investors are coming into the marketplace, that's a good thing for everybody, including us.
Are you confident about the economy?
I am. I think that we've seen a slowdown in certain sectors like housing, but overall, I talk to a lot of corporate CEOs, and they're still very optimistic about their prospects. So yes, I am.
Do you feel, we heard yesterday Mayor Bloomberg was commissioning a council that was going to come out and look at why a lot of companies, as big multinational companies from China, are listing in London rather than here. Do you feel like you're winning the battle case by case to get them to choose to list here rather than on the London Stock Exchange?
Well, there's no question that the attractiveness of the U.S. marketplace has deteriorated some because of Sarbanes-Oxley, and particularly 404, because of the litigation environment in this country, because of some of the regulatory competition between, for instance, the Attorney General here in New York and the SEC. And I think that is a concern, and so I think the mayor is correct to be concerned about that. But I also think that we continue to attract a lot of entrepreneurial companies. For instance, we just had Mindray list here, which is an entrepreneurial company coming out of China. It's a great company. And so we're continuing to see a lot of international listings here, but we are concerned about the competitiveness of the U.S. Marketplace.
More London listed, correct me if I'm wrong, London listed more international companies so far this year than the big board, though, right?
Well, that's
They're getting a
true.
bigger
It was
share
like
of the
9
pie.
of the top 10 or something.
Well, there's two things about that. Well, if you look at the actual numbers, that's true, but you really should separate out AIM, because AIM is a large number of the actual numbers that they listed, which are the very small companies. But they also, if you look at of the 10 largest initial public offerings in the world, 9 out of 10 were not listed in the U.S. Now, a portion of those were in London, a group of them were also in Hong Kong.
The Starbucks problem kind of points out an inherent difficulty as we move to borderless markets, doesn't it? I mean, the regulation has to come from somewhere, but where does it come from?
Well, I think you have to separate Starbucks overall from 404. Starbucks itself was fine. I think it came at an important time. The governance changes were good. So it's really the 404 process, and I think you're going to see changes in the 404 process. I've spent a lot of time talking to the SEC. I've testified in front of Congress, and I am confident that with Chairman Cox and with the new head of the Public Accounting Oversight Board, we will see changes in how 404 is implemented.
John, we just, as you were talking, we crossed it, and then we dipped a little bit back lower, but we did cross it, so now we'll have to see if we can hold it.
Maybe we should just get John to stand here and talk all
Yeah,
day.
One more question for you, though.
Sure.
We talk about the internet bubble and how the Nasdaq's still off 55% from its all-time high, and there are people out there, Miller Tabak today, saying, hey, we're a little bit more focused on the fact that the Dow is the only one that's back at the all-time high. Do you think that's sort of a concern nature or pessimism it has a place here?
Well, if you look at the broader indexes, for instance, the S&P Composite, it is still actually somewhat below its all-time high. But I still think that the market level is driven by the economy. The economy continues to be strong, and so, I'm optimistic still about the outlook for the market.
All right. Well, John, thanks so much.
John Thane, thank you very much.
Don't
sir.
leave the floor today. We need you. All right, John Thane there, the chairman of the New York Stock Exchange. So,
And
Art,
Caston, thank you very much.
We're going to go find somebody with a wallet and get you through what you need, all right?
please get us to stay here, gentlemen. All right.
All right,
Great to see you.
where do you want to go now, Sandy? Sandy's our producer. You want to take a break?
No, we're going to bring Brian Gendron
Oh, yeah.
in from ING. Hello, Brian. Great to have you with us.
Thank you.
We touched it.
Pleasure.
You think we're gonna be able to hold on? How significant is it that we keep touching and not holding?
Well, there are those people out there who view it as a selling opportunity every time you get near the top. But if I had to bet one way or the other, I think we'll probably break it today. If not today, tomorrow, when we get numbers on personal income, PCE, if that remains subdued, and consumer sentiment remains strong, then people are going to think, gee, maybe the economy really isn't as weak as we've all thought.
How significant, though, if we... well, let me start again. So your argument is the economy is strong enough to support the Dow at its present level, right?
I think so.
You're not worried that lots of people are worried about inflation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, well, no, I think the last couple CPI numbers have come in fairly subdued, and the CPI is a lagging indicator. The economy is weakening because of housing. No one knows how weak. It's a big question of what the spillovers from housing will be as the economy. But there's been a lot of very bad news placed into the market, and now, you know, with consumer confidence picking up, with oil prices down, with interest rates, long-term rates coming down, and with a lot of the uncertainty about the Fed off the table, it's not looking so bad for stocks.
Now, is it bad that the S&P is lagging, or is it simply a case of, well, one of them has to get there first, and it's not that damaging?
You mean the S&P versus the Dow?
You got a lot of tech in that S&P.
Well,
Because some people say, look, you know, the S&P, broader index, et cetera, better reflection of the economy, what, 10 or 15% below its record high, therefore the Dow is all an illusion. Others say, you know, somebody has to get there first, it happens to be the Dow.
yeah, well, I would bet on the Dow, just because the Dow is large cap stocks. They're really very big companies. And PEs on large cap stocks are at an 11-year low. I mean, people have been buying anything but large cap stocks over the past few years. They've been buying high yield bonds and emerging market stocks and small cap stocks. So they're really overdue for some good performance.
You just mentioned bonds. Now, we have seen a rally in bonds as well, and some have said, can you continue to have both bonds and stocks rallying at the same time? I believe, though, that you're making a bet on stocks right now.
I think on stocks, yeah. We went overweight stocks this week. Our view is basically at 4.6 on the 10-year Treasury. Investors really aren't getting compensated for taking 10-year risk, particularly when you can get 5 1/4 on CDs with no principal risk at all.
Thanks very much.
All right.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your time.
Brian, thanks so much. We appreciate it. And now we want to bring in back in Rob Morgan from Janney Montgomery. We told you, he said he'd stand by. Luckily, he did, because, Rob, maybe it was the combination of all of you waiting around that is finally going to do it for us, although we're dipped back below. What are your thoughts?
Well, I tend to think that it's a symbolic level. It is good to get across it. I think Art Cashin made a good point earlier that it's what
Is to struggle trying to get through this level of resistance. Don't go away.
Are you? Now we're back.
Right here on the floor of the exchange, where we got up just over the previous record close, and then turned around and went back down.
That's because John Thane walked away.
Right, we should have kept Thane here talking, because while he talked, it went up.
He's our
and
little
when he
good luck
left, it
totem.
went down.
He's like our rabbit finger.
Yeah, he said...
rabbit tail, whatever. Foot, right.
Speaking of rabbit feet, David Faber's somewhere around here, isn't he? I've always considered David kind of a lucky charm.
Yeah, really. Well, you know, you haven't got me started yet on the Dow, Mark, but you know what I'm going to say. But I want to start by talking about GM, which has contributed to the Dow's move up in the third quarter. In fact, the largest single contributor, GM being the best performing of the Dow components, up over 26% coming into today. Add another 4% to that, and you're talking about a more than 30% jump in shares of GM over the course of Q3. There's a tick by tick. Why up today? Well, news that Kirk Kerkorian's Trescinda Corp wants to increase its stake in the automaker from a current 56 million shares to as much as 62 million, and perhaps at some point, it says, as much as 68 million shares. So going from about 9.9 to as much as 12%. But in order to do that, Trescinda needs GM's help in a way to deal with something called the Office of Thrift Supervision. And that's because GM owns interests in various insurance, banking, trust, industrial loan companies, and any acquisition that will result in Trescinda owning more than 10% could be subject to the prior satisfaction of applicable